Hi everyone. For my presentation, I interviewed my friend Sofia Benales. Sophie is a third-generation Mexican-American. Her grandparents are from Mexico, and she has a deep connection to her Mexican heritage from her grandma who raised her, and she played a central role in Sophie's life. And she told me stories about growing up, how she affected her. For this project, I decided to focus on two main things. I focused on the relationship between language and cultural identity, and then the idea of hospitality within Latino culture. I really wanted to investigate more of how Sophie navigates both her Mexican and American identities. With that, Sophie explained something she mentioned is how with knowing Spanish versus English, there's some things that make more sense when you're speaking Spanish and you can express better, versus there are some things that just make more sense when you're speaking in English. And then I thought that this duality between languages mirrors her connection to both of her cultures. Another thing is Sophie decided to join the National Guard, and she saw that as a way of serving her country and her heritage. So that was really interesting. I made some connections to what we studied in class during the interview. For instance, in chapter 1, we learned that Spanish doesn't always align with someone's cultural identity because Spanish is specifically Spain heritage. And so going into the conversation, I was careful with the words I used and cautious of that. And Sophie prefers Mexican, specifically from her Mexican heritage, so I was aware of that. Another thing that we discussed in class that connected to the interview was the concept of La Familia and how the network of family is more extended than what we might experience in a traditional American family. And so Sophie told me the story of how her grandparents owned a Mexican restaurant, and then now that she's older, she works in a Mexican restaurant also. And she talked about how the hospitality is just so much greater than what you would experience in other restaurants you would go to. And that's because of, Mexican hospitality and how they treat everyone like family. Something that surprised me in this presentation and this project was the diversity of experiences between Mexican-American families. And just knowing that culture and the way someone expresses it isn't always uniform. For Sophie, she talked about how her dad is second generation, his parents, so he's fully Mexican from his lineage, but he doesn't identify much with his Mexican heritage. But then Sophie and her siblings, who are from Mexico, more strongly relate to that. So something I found interesting and useful was how this project helped me rethink cultural assumptions. I went into the interview thinking that I knew a lot based on what I had learned in class and what also I'd known from Sophie from knowing her growing up. But I learned that each family has its own unique experiences and that cultural identity varies a lot within the same background. It deepened my appreciation for complexity of cultural identity and also the value of learning people's stories beyond surface level assumptions. Okay, and that's all. Thank you.